December 24th, 1914. Europe is in the grip of the First World War. For months, soldiers from opposing nations, Germans on one side, British and French troops on the other, have faced each other from the muddy trenches that snake through France and Belgium. The sounds of war are all they know: gunfire, shelling, orders shouted through gritted teeth. The war that was supposed to be over by Christmas has become a brutal and grueling deadlock. The soldiers are huddled, weary, and cold as night begins to fall on Christmas Eve. The air is sharp with the frost that has settled over the muddy landscape. It's quiet now, an unsettling calm for those who have become accustomed to the constant roar of battle. But what happened on that night, what unfolded over the next few days, is a story that defies the horrors of war. It's a moment of compassion, even brotherhood, amidst the unimaginable. This is the story of the 1914 Christmas Truce. Let's imagine ourselves there. Picture it: muddy trenches that stretch on for miles, filled with exhausted soldiers. Just feet away, across the bleak expanse of no man's land, sit the enemy, a mere stone's throw away. The trench walls are lined with sandbags, barbed wire, and rifles propped up for quick action. Soldiers are shivering in heavy coats, struggling to stay warm in a winter that feels colder than anything they've ever known. Now, despite the misery, something extraordinary is about to happen. As night falls, the silence grows thicker. And then, as if out of nowhere, something strange and unexpected occurs. A sound breaks the quiet. A melody floats across no man's land. It's faint at first, almost ghostly, but there it is. A voice, singing, from the German trenches. The British soldiers can't quite make out the words, but they recognize the tune. It's a Christmas carol. Stille Nacht, or Silent Night in English. As they listen, a few British soldiers begin humming along. This simple melody, carried on the winter air, is somehow able to cross the divide. A familiar sound that reminds these men of their homes, their families, their lives before now. Imagine the courage it must have taken, there in that trench, to rise up out of that mud and risk your life. That's exactly what happened next. As the song fades, one British soldier shouts, "Merry Christmas, Fritz!" And from the German side, a voice calls back, "Merry Christmas, Tommy!" The voices of soldiers, each calling to the other, fill the air. Now, imagine the courage it must have taken, there in that trench, to rise up out of that mud and risk your life. That's exactly what happened next. As the song fades, one British soldier shouts, "Merry Christmas, Fritz!" And from the German side, a voice calls back, "Merry Christmas, Tommy!" The voices of soldiers, each calling to the other, fill the air. Slowly, tentatively, they begin to emerge from their trenches. First one, then two, then groups of soldiers climb out, hands raised to show they mean no harm. These men, who had been shooting at each other just hours earlier, now meet in the middle, in that perilous stretch of land that only moments before had symbolized death. But on this night, it becomes something different. It becomes a meeting place. Imagine, if you can, the scene in no man's land that night. Soldiers from both sides shake hands, exchanging Christmas greetings. For some, language is a barrier, but they communicate through gestures, smiles, and laughter. Cigarettes are shared, a rare treat out here. Chocolate, buttons, small keepsakes, they swap whatever they have, as if somehow these small tokens will bridge the gap between them. One British soldier hands a German soldier his tobacco tin. The German smiles, and in return, he hands over a small box of cigars. There's a universal understanding in the exchange. This is more than just sharing. They are recognizing each other's humanity. For this brief moment, they're not enemies. They're just men caught in a war neither wanted to be part of. Then, something truly remarkable happens. Someone, no one's sure who, brings out a football. In the icy mud of no man's land, German and British soldiers start a game of soccer. There are no uniforms or team flags, no referees or official rules, just boots kicking a ball back and forth across the frozen ground. The soccer game isn't about winning. It's an act of joy, a connection, a way to pretend, just for a few minutes, that things are normal, that they're back home on a field with friends. It's as if the war doesn't exist for those brief moments. It's just a game, and that's enough. As dawn begins to break, they return to their trenches. The unofficial truce continues for a few days in some areas. The soldiers have created their own ceasefire, exchanging gifts, even helping bury each other's dead with a somber sense of respect. They are, in some strange way, united in the grief and hardship that war has thrust upon them. But soon, the generals hear about the truce. They issue orders demanding that fighting resume. They can't allow this kind of fraternization with the enemy. The soldiers are reminded of their duty and ordered to resume the war. The men return to their trenches, pick up their rifles, and resume their roles as soldiers. The laughter fades, and the sounds of war begin again. But those who were there on that Christmas of 1914 carry this moment with them forever. Many of them would not survive the war, but those who did would tell the story, a story of kindness and humanity, in a place where it should not have existed. The Christmas Truce of 1914 is often viewed as a miraculous event, a brief spark of peace in an otherwise relentless war. It reminds us that even in the darkest times, there's a shared humanity that can bring people together. Some say that this truce was a mistake, a dangerous display of sympathy toward the enemy. But for those who took part, it was a reminder of who they were beyond the uniforms and the rifles. In those few hours, in the face of an immense war machine, they reclaimed their humanity. And for a fleeting moment, the light of peace shone, even in the darkest of places. And as we look back on this story, over a century later, perhaps the message endures, that in the face of conflict, there's always room for compassion. The Christmas Truce reminds us that even when the world is at war, a spark of humanity can still shine through.